After my Terraria Melee X Ranger video, I actually got a lot of comments about how effective mixing Summoner and Melee is, and to my surprise, a lot of people seemingly disagree with the notion of not mixing classes throughout the game, as under most circumstances, it'd be generally weaker than simply going for a single one. But this playthrough I sort of changed my mind on that kind of thinking. Important things to keep in mind are that this time, it was in single player, and I beat Golem, but I never killed the Moonlord since I didn't feel like doing so. And because it definitely wasn't necessary to talk about how powerful this mix of the classes is, and believe me, it's strong. Hope you all enjoyed this video, and definitely check out my other channel for short, comedic, animated fictional interviews. Link will be in the top right now and in the comments. Pre-hard mode, general experience. Unsurprisingly, pre-hard mode for the pre and a lot of the post-boss sections was basically the exact same, though this is where I developed my main way for how I'd go about mixing these classes. I'd focus on melee armor only and have accessories that are for summoners. I saw other ways people suggested on how they go about this, and how they went about it presumably in pre-hard mode, as I could have gotten the flinks for a coat, pieces of the B armor, and etc. to have more summons, but this works well enough and I found armor mixing to be unnecessary. Armor prioritization. As I said, I went for melee only armor and summoner accessories. I went with the same armor sets I used last time. Tungsten, shadow armor, and then I got molten armor, which I didn't do last time. Unfortunately, I actually regretted my decision in getting molten armor, as the shadow armor is just flat out better than the molten in my experience, for at least mixed playthroughs due to its mobility, which to me is far more valuable than a little extra defense and melee damage. The only true summoner accessory in pre-hard mode was a pygmy necklace, which I kept on for the rest of the game, and naturally after Skeletron I got the bewitching table, which was very powerful, as like the pygmy necklace, it gives one extra summon permanently after using it. For the rest of the game, I now had 3 summons consistently, and this would never change unless, of course, I use a summoning potion. Weapon prioritization. I naturally prioritized melee and used all of the summons you'd expect as I continued into pre-hard mode. Flink Staff, B Staff, and the Imp Staff were all the weapons that I used, and as you'd expect, I used any melee weapon I could. Whips were entirely necessary, and this would continue to be right up until I decided to stop playing, as I already had melee weapons and summons were simply there to add on damage. Overall, pre-hard mode honestly just felt like normal aside from just having summons there to help out a bit with the range and extra DPS. It doesn't feel like the summons helped out that much, like how range helped me a lot when I went with a hybrid of Melee X Ranger last time despite the extra DPS and range consistently with Summoner. Hard mode, Pre-Mech. General experience. Pre-Mech was probably the most normal melee experience I could have ever had, as it was pretty hard and slow. I got very important powerful weapons that I used for the rest of the game, like the Shadow Flame knife, and I messed around with an extraordinarily weak set, the Cobalt armor. Everything building up to the Mech bosses was, as I said, hard, but with the melee and summons I had, each boss was a piece of cake to take down once I got to it. Armor prioritization. As I said, for fun, I went for Cobalt armor, as I haven't made this set since my Wii U days of playing Terraria in like 2016. But then I was reminded of why, and I want to take a second to talk about this armor's abilities. The set functions as a more powerful version of Shadow armor with its increased movement and melee speed buffs. I love being able to go fast in Terraria, which is why I always use the Magnoluminescence. But the issues with this is that, again, it's a more powerful version of the Shadow armor, which makes it unoriginal, and the abilities it gives are too lackluster to be worth it, unlike sets like Palladium for its regeneration and Orchiladium for its flower petals. The set is terrible, but it wasn't so bad that I couldn't beat a boss with it. And in fact, the first boss I killed after getting this set was the Queen Slime, so that I could get the infinitely better Crystal Assassin set. Before this, I was preparing Defender medals for some Old One's army armor in the future, specifically the Squire set for its regeneration and better ballistic abilities. But I'll talk more on this later. Weapon prioritization. By this point, I basically only use the Shadow Flame knife thanks to its great debuff, range, and good damage, and its cool bounce off ability that allowed it to hit an enemy multiple times or allowed it to hit multiple enemies after a single throw. Not to mention that I could stack the Shadow Flame debuff with the Cursed Flask to do even more damage over time. This alone would have been powerful, plus the fact that I found a sharpening station to increase my melee weapon's armor penetration. But, as I said earlier, I had also grinded Queen Slime for the Crystal Assassin armor. Naturally, while doing this, I got access to the simply alright summon, the Blade Staff. Every time I've gotten this weapon, it's been just alright, and this was especially true for this point in the game. Unlike all other summons I had previously, be them great or mid, I felt this one was the least important despite me having it for the longest. I still use it of course, but at this point in the game, summons were only useful for adding a teeny tiny little extra bit of DPS, since I had great range and damage already with the probably underrated Shadow Flame knife. Overall, this part of the game was very slow and difficult, and a bit annoying due to the corruption being basically right by my house, and also spawning underground somewhere in the jungle, which kept destroying my NPC houses, and I bet that sounds way less annoying than it actually is. My experience though was great from here, and it only got better. Post-Mech. General experience. Post-Mech was one of my favorite parts of the entire game for this mixing, aside from trying to grind for the chain guillotines for like 3 hours, which taught me that maybe it'd be a good idea to do journey worlds on expert from now on for videos like this. Great time though. Armor prioritization. I grinded hard for the Valhalla armor, but of course I couldn't get it yet as I didn't kill Golem, so I kept using the Squire armor for its bonus in regeneration, melee, and summon damage, and a solid buff to the Ballista Sentry. Weapon prioritization. I actually stuck with using the Shadowflame knife as my main for the entirety of Post-Mech in Pre-Plantera. It was such a shockingly good weapon, despite being accessible before killing your first mech boss, that even amazing weapons like the True Excalibur and obscenely mid weapons like the True Knight's Edge couldn't compare to it. Naturally, I use both sometimes, but the Shadowflame knife was just something else. Sanguine Staff blew the Blade Staff out of the water once I finally grinded for it, and got it thanks to its higher range and better defensive abilities. And by that I mean it hit enemies nearby usually, which helped keep them away. This run actually made me appreciate the Sanguine Staff and the Shadowflame knife's power, which opened my eyes a bit to new weapons that I should go for as soon as possible in future playthroughs. Post-Golem. General experience. Again, I decided not to kill the Moonlord, so after Golem, I pretty much stopped playing. But similarly to Post-Mech, this is one of the most freeing and fun parts of the game. Armor prioritization. I went for the Valhalla armor for the exact same reasons as I went for the Squire armor. Its regeneration mixed with the little Golem stone was just stellar. Due to this being such a simple change for simple, obvious reasons, there's not much else to talk about here. Weapon prioritization. I changed up a lot during this period. I got things like the Terrablade, but the Shadowflame knife was still very useful and strong up until I got the Influx Waver, as its damage I felt were better than the Terrablades. Before a Terrablade lover says something about how the Terrablade is way better or whatever in the comments, I disagree because I formed a new opinion about the Influx Waver. Previously, it was a weapon I've never used before, but its single target damage was genuinely on another level compared to everything else I had. It smoked all the other weapons I had and would want to get in the future. And though it's worse than the Terrablade when it comes to area damage overall isn't as important as single target damage in my experience here. The Shadowflame knife had an insane run from Pre-Mech all the way up to until the Martians after Golem, but I ended with the Influx Waver on the melee side. On the summoning side though, I got the Morningstar, which was an amazing albeit slow high damage area attacking whip that I use frequently. I also liked it because it increased summon tag damage, and I think whips let summons crit too, but don't quote me on that. So it was a weapon I used sometimes just for that reason. And my final summon was a Raven Staff for its crazy ass constant damage. I did want the Xenostaff instead since it's a far more not only visually interesting summon, but also a ranged summon that can't miss. Also, I want to shout out the Sphere Staff for being alright. Nice job. You are alright, Sphere Staff. Strong but forgettable. Conclusion. Summoner X Melee was powerful, but due to how Summoner functions, the actual impact of the summons isn't as felt as it would be in comparison to any other class. I do suggest that if you never tried doing something like this, then try to do a sub-summoner thing with any class. Summons DPS actually does help a noticeable bit, even if it doesn't feel necessary. This wasn't my most interesting run of Terraria, especially when you compare it to my Melee X Ranger run, but it still was kinda cool to go through this. Hope you enjoyed this video, and again, check out my comedic animated interview series on my other channel. It just started and I post animations there frequently. Subscribe, leave some suggestions for future Terraria videos, and goodbye.